Hey, Nick, what concert costs just 45 cents?
I don't know, Sin. What concert costs just 45 cents?
50 Cent featuring Nickelback.
That's actually pretty good.
Hi, Cynder.
Hey, boss, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I can't complain. Sitting here talking to you and some awesome people in chat. Can't complain. Doing great.
Awesome. And today we're going to talk about the Divine Dragon.
We sure are. Oh, Divine is misspelled in the title. It's D-I-V-I-N-E.
No, this is how it's spelled from now on. I like it better this way.
Guys, you heard it. We've made history. We've changed the spelling of the word divine. That's how things work here in Dignity City.
So, Cynder.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me about the Divine Dragon.
Oh, my goodness. Well, the Divine Dragon is at the root of course, Wolf's immortality and Kuro's blessing/curse, and it's at the root of the Rejuvenating Waters and the Divine Child of the Rejuvenating Waters and the Red-Eyed People and all of that stuff. According to the lore in the game, long ago, the Divine Dragon came from the west and took root in the Fountainhead region, where there were, where the water was abundant enough for it to take root. And from that came the Okami people, which are the crazy blue women that you fight in the Fountainhead region. I say crazy because as they're fighting you, they're like, they're just yelling like crazy. They're all the time yelling and jumping around and tossing lightning at you and all this other crazy stuff. So yeah, now when it says that the Divine Dragon came from the west, I don't believe that this giant one-armed reptile came from the west. Well, it probably had both of its arms at the time. I believe, because I think that the Divine Dragon, like Smotown, I very much agree with Smotown on this. The Divine Dragon is a spiritual being, but its physical avatar in the earthly plane is the Everblossom tree, the giant Sakura tree. So I think that's what came over. I think the West is not literally the West. I think the West is the divine realm. Hold on, let me find the notes I have on it, because it's actually kind of interesting. Everything in this game is traceable to Buddhism in some way or another, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like when it says from the West, I don't think it means some physical place west of Japan. It's talking about the Western Pure Lands of Buddhism, which would be called Gokuraku, which is translated to ultimate bliss. It's something that you can attain in Buddhism if you follow the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. I don't know how much depth you want to go into in that, but the second truth I think is at the philosophical core of the game. Buddhism kind of is a pragmatic. I'm not Buddhist myself, but it's pragmatic in that it kind of revolves around the fact that the world kind of sucks. There's all this suffering in the world, and we're trying to transcend it. The first truth is suffering exists, and the second truth is suffering has a cause. And basically, the cause of all suffering is desire and ignorance. Like, people crave pleasure, they crave material goods, and very relevant to Sekiro, they crave immortality. And all three of these can never ever be satisfied, right? And so people in their ignorance, as they pursue these things, especially immortality in Sekiro, it leads to envy, hatred, anger, and corruption. And of course, at the heart of Sekiro is this notion that the pursuit of immortality leads to corruption and stagnation, right?
Mm-hmm. Which leads to the dark side.
Which leads to the dark side, exactly, where we have cookies. Very well done. So yeah, so a lot of the philosophy of Sekiro is bound up in the second truth of Buddhism. So if you follow the four truths, and then the fourth truth is that the key to ending suffering is following the Eightfold Path, right communication, right thought, right whatever. If you do all this, then you can attain Gokuraku, which is sort of you can get to the Western Pure Lands, the ultimate bliss. And so that's what I think the West, basically, if you translate it into Sekiro terms, the West is the divine realm. And the divine realm is sort of the equivalent of this Gokuraku ultimate bliss Western Pure Land. So when the game says West, it means the divine realm. It's not literally China. Because when when you go to fight the divine dragon in the divine realm, the wolf's like, "Holy crap, I'm in the divine realm." He doesn't say, "Holy crap, I'm in China," or "I'm in Europe." Holy crap, I'm in the divine realm. You know,
Yeah. Hmm. Right.
they're talking about the divine realm when they say the West, and so the Everblossom, the physical representation of the divine dragon, came from the West, and because in ancient times the lands of Ashina were abundant, at least that portion of Ashina where Fountainhead is had abundant water, the tree was able to take root, and
Hmm.
that gave rise to the Okami civilization. Um, so that's where, as far as that's as far back in the lore as we know the divine dragon to have done anything. Is that the fact that it came from the divine realm? So it took root in Ashina and gave rise to the Okami civilization. These crazy warrior women
Hmm.
who throw lightning and scream. And then at some point, uh, we come across Takeru. And of course, to talk about the divine dragon, we're going to have to talk about Takeru and Tomoe and Kuro.
And the DLC that will not be.
Oh gosh, I wish it would.
Yeah.
I really do wish it would. Because I would see the DLC picking up after the return ending as Wolf accompanies the divine child on the way to the divine realm. You know,
Yeah.
killing stuff to protect her and Kuro. But yeah, no, wishful thinking.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll happen. Maybe it'll happen. I'm still holding out for Bloodborne 2, so I'm still holding out for a Sekiro DLC.
Bloodborne 2 has to happen for PS5, please.
That's what I'm thinking. We're not going to see it till PS5.
Yeah.
But I think it'll happen. Even if it's just like a prequel, like they could go back to like Lauren and track what happened in Lauren when Koss was born, you know, as a great one.
Mm.
I'll let Richard talk about that though. That's his thing, Bloodborne. But yeah, at some point, well, let me just to talk about the Divine Heir a little bit. I think we might have talked about this before. But if you translate what's translated as Divine Heir, if you look at the Japanese, it's like son of God or son of a god. So in some sense, the Divine Heir is descended from the dragon. Like it's a part of the dragon. It has the dragon's blood in it. And Smoketown had an interesting insight about that, an interesting observation. Everywhere you see, like, the dragon's blood droplet looks like a leaf from a sakura tree, a cherry blossom, also translated ever blossom, right?
Yeah.
So, like in the purification ending, when you cut your head off, you see those cherry blossom petals. Those are the blood of the blood of the dragon. The blood of the dragon is not crimson liquid; it's those little leaves. You know?
That's a good observation.
Yeah. I have to credit Smoketown for that. He made that wonderful observation. I'm like, holy crap, he's got a point, right? So yeah, those petals are the blood of the dragon. So the Divine Heir, and by extension the Oathbound, i.e., Wolf in this case, has the actual blood of the dragon inside them, and therefore they're immortal.
Mm-hmm.
You can't because the item description of, I think, the dragon's tear says that the dragon's body is eternal. So anything with the dragon's blood inside is going to be, sort of everlasting in a sense, unless it comes across the mortal blade, which is kind of an exception to the rule, I guess.
Yeah.
But that's another matter. So the dragon's heir is actually somehow came forth from or descended from or was begotten of, the divine dragon. And the earliest divine heir we know of is Takeru. There could have been others, before that, but the earliest we know is Takeru. At some point, Takeru and Takomi descended from the divine realm and somehow wound up in Ashina, and apparently they couldn't get back. Somehow, because they tried in vain. If you read the various journals that you find, at some point when Takeru decided he wanted to do immortal severance, they tried in vain to get back to the divine realm, but they couldn't. At one point, Tomoe gives up hope. She's like, "Oh, we're never going to get back to the divine realm," and now Takeru is coming down with a sickness. And they're immortal, but not really. I'll explain that in a bit, because when you fight the divine dragon, you see that rot has overtaken it. I think that can happen to the divine heir. There's a theory. It wasn't Smoketown; it was somebody else, but I agree with it. Like, there's a theory about that, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So Takeru and Takomi come from the divine realm. I think it would have to be well after the divine dragon came and took root in the form of the Everblossom. Oh, shoot! Speaking of some interesting Japanese mythology behind that.
Yeah.
The Japanese have these spirits called Kodama, and they live in trees. They're the spirits inside the trees. And so the divine dragon is the spirit inside the Everblossom tree.
Oh, that is so good.
Yeah. And interestingly, if you injure or cut the bark off of these trees that have the Kodama in them, you invite misfortune.
Oh no!
You invite corruption. And of course, so Takero plucked off a piece of the Everblossom and took it with him to Ashina. And it's after that point you start to see the Dragonrot. It's after that point you start to see all the corruption. Before then, as far as you can tell, there was no Dragonrot. There was no corruption.
Mm-hmm.
So it's once Takero broke off a piece of the Everblossom and took it with him to Ashina. It's the reason I say that it had to be well after the Divine Dragon came was because Takero and Tokomi actually lived on the Ashina estate with Genichiro, with Ishin, right? So it's within their lifetimes. But the Divine Dragon came in ancient times, long ago. Now it could be that since they were immortal, it could be that they came with him and hung around in Fountainhead, and then only later broke off the branch and came to Ashina. So I guess it could be that they came from the divine realm with the dragon and then made their way over to Ashina eons later. It could be.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, however they got here. And then when they decided to go off to Ashina, Takero broke off a piece of the Everblossom, took it with him, and that was probably what set everything in motion. As far as the corruption and the Dragonrot. Because the divine child says that the dragon's heritage was not meant for this world to begin with. But I'm not sure that the simple fact of the Everblossom being here and the divine heritage being here. Oh, you know what? Okay, no. Okay, let me back up. So in ancient times, the divine dragon takes root in Fountainhead. Maybe Takero and Tokomi come with it. Everything's fine. But then at some point, Takero gets it in his head to break off a piece of the Everblossom and go to Japan. Later on, you talk to the divine child after you give her the holy chapter Dragon's Return. She says that the dragon's heritage broke free from its homeland and found its way to Japan. So, yeah, I'm thinking that in some sense that's a reference to the divine dragon coming here in the form of the Everblossom. But because it's like a lot of times when you speak in parables and when you speak in stories and metaphors, a lot of times stuff will have a dual meaning. So I think it may refer to the divine dragon coming here, but more than that, it may refer to Takero breaking off a piece of the branch and leaving the Fountainhead region, which is sort of, in some sense, an offshoot of the divine realm, and coming to Ashina.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that, because I think that's where all the trouble started, because it's after that you see the Dragonrot, you see all these things. So she says it wasn't meant for this land. The power of the dragon's heritage wasn't meant for this land. So as long as it's there, away from the Everblossom, away from the Okami people, it's going to cause corruption because it's incompatible with our mortal plane. It's incompatible with anything beyond the divine dragon and its offshoots and its descendants.
Mm-hmm.
So is that any of that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Let me ask: does the chat have any questions for Nick so far that are relevant to what has been said?
Yeah, I hope that was easy because I'm looking at my notes, but also sort of speaking extemporaneously at the same time.
Speaking what?
Extemporaneously.
Can you spell that?
I'll type it in chat. There you go.
Oh my god, that's a long word.
It is. Well, I'm a writer, so I know lots of words. But yeah, so that's sort of the beginning. So yeah, it draws richly from all sorts of cool Japanese mythology. It really does. But yeah, and so the Divine Dragon sort of gives root to all that, and the Divine Dragon has a pretty direct connection to the Rejuvenating Waters. Because the rejuvenating the corrupt Buddhist monks in Senpou Temple took the rejuvenating waters and condensed it down into the rejuvenating sediment, which is what Genichiro uses to kind of survive when you kill him in the second boss fight up at the top of the castle, right?
Mm-hmm.
The rejuvenating waters, I'm pretty sure, originate at Fountainhead. You look everywhere, you see all this water flowing down the hills and down the mountains, and when you walk up the hill to pray at the shrine and go to the Divine Realm, this water is flowing down the steps and into the basin and from there to the rest of Fountainhead. That there is the rejuvenating waters. The monks somehow got a hold of that and condensed it down to the rejuvenating sediment. So the rejuvenating water springs from the Everblossom, springs from the Divine Dragon. So there's a connection between the Divine Dragon and almost literally everything else in the game, because it's the source of all this, the immortality and all the corruption. But now, Takero may not have known what he was doing, that he was setting all this bad stuff in motion when he plucked off a piece of the Everblossom, because it says that the aromatic branch description says that Takero took it because it reminded him of home. So he probably didn't think he was doing anything bad. He just took it for the sentimental value. It reminded him of his progenitor, the divine dragon. It reminded him of home. So he just brought it with him to Ashina. Why they came to Ashina, I don't know. A dialogue with Ishin hints that there might have been a love affair between Tomoe and him at some point. Something happened between the two that almost killed Ishin. I'm not sure what it was. The game doesn't really explain what it was. It could have been anything. But the fact that Tomoe was a guest in the Ashina estate for a long time, along with Takeru, indicates that they weren't antagonistic to each other, for the most part. Or Ishin wouldn't have allowed them to stay on the estate, right? Because he was the head honcho, So they stayed there at his sufferance. So they couldn't have been antagonistic to each other. So they might. It sort of hints that there might have been some sort of love affair between them that almost led to Ishin's death. And I also think that. Okay, so we're going to come back now from the ancient times to the more modern times. The first time we see Dragonrot was within Emma's lifetime, because Emma talks about it and how her mentor / adoptive father Dogen tried to find a cure for it. It could very well coincide with with Ishin's coup, because the Ashina people established themselves, and at one point in time, the Ashina people had war with the Okami women, and they used the Sabimaru against the Okami women, and for that reason, it's venerated as a national treasure. And we'll talk about that when we do the podcast on the prosthetic tools. But the Sabimaru has that rich war, yeah.
So there were prosthetics of Sekiro, right?
That's right. But yeah, so the Ashina people use the Sabimaru to fight off the Okami women and kind of keep them in Fountainhead, I guess, and not, or to drive them from that region so that Ashina could set up their home there. Then later on, they were subjugated by the Interior Ministry, the Central Forces, and then Ishin, about 20 years before the events of the game, leads a coup to take back the land from the Central Ministry and Interior Forces. And it was around that time that we see Dragonrot for the first time. And that leads me to believe that Takeru and Tomoe were using their immortal powers to aid Ishin in his coup, because they could die and be reborn over and over again. And of course, as Emma explains to us, the cause of the Dragonrot is the dying and the being reborn, and the dying and the being reborn. It's sapping the life force from other people in order to allow the oathbound of the dragon's heir to keep coming back to life. Right? We're literally sapping the life force from other people. And so that's the first time we see the Dragonrot. The Dogen desperately tried to find a cure for it, but he couldn't. And then later on, when Genichiro tries to make use of the dragon's heritage in the coming battle against the Interior Ministry, Ishin wants us to stop it. And the reason for that is because he doesn't want the Dragonrot to spread again. Because he saw that people died from it. He doesn't want to afflict his people with that again. He's like, okay, it's over with. We contained it once. We don't want it spreading again. So I think that's why Ishin wants to stop Genichiro. Of course, Wolf dying and coming back is contributing to it.
Right.
But maybe, I'm not sure if Ishin realized that Wolf was the Oathbound or not. I think he probably did. He almost certainly did, because Ishin kind of knew everything. You didn't get anything past Ishin.
That's true.
Ishin was well aware of what was happening. But and two, I guess he didn't want Genichiro to be corrupted by the rejuvenating waters either. It was too late, but he didn't want to introduce the corruption of the rejuvenating waters to his people either. Because you've seen what it does. It makes you red-eyed. It turns into this sort of half-human, half-demonic thing, And Ishin didn't want his grandson or his people to be corrupted by that either. So for multiple reasons, Ishin wants us to, stop Genichiro, which we do. Well, sort of. It depends.
Yeah.
In every ending but the Shura ending, we do stop him. Which the Shura ending is different. Because it's hard to tell what happens to Genichiro in the Shura ending because we don't see him after the second boss fight. But Ishin has the Black Mortal Blade and Genichiro doesn't. So anyway, it's weird. I'm not sure exactly what happens there, but it's not directly relevant to the Divine Dragon. So yes, so now we've gotten to modern times at Takeru and Tomoe. Now, I think there has to be some sort of blood relationship between Takeru and Kuro. Because, like I said, the Japanese translates the dragon's heir as the son of God, son of a god, some sort of descendant who proceeded out of the Divine Dragon. And so to me, that indicates a lineal line of descent. So I'm thinking there has to be some sort of family relationship between Kuro and Takeru. Now, it's interesting that Kuro never knew this. And by all indications, Kuro grew up with a human family. When at the beginning of the game, when we first fight Genichiro in that tutorial boss fight, well, not tutorial, but in that, that big boss fight, Genichiro remarks that the last time he and Kuro had stood together was at Kuro's uncle's funeral. And I'm sure Kuro's uncle was not an Okami, right? I'm sure Kuro's uncle was a human, you know? I'm thinking that at some point, maybe Takeru had a love affair with a human woman or something. Somehow the dragon's blood got from Takeru to Kuro, and, you know, a sexual relationship giving rise to a paternal relationship would make sense, you know? And I initially thought that maybe Takeru and Takumi had relations and gave birth to Kuro, but Kuro's human, you know, by every indication. And you would think that it would be an Okami child if the two of them had relations, you know, because Tomoe was Okami by every indication. Because if you read the way Ishin talks about her and the fact that she introduced the lightning and the Okami warriors use lightning, and Genichiro fights like an Okami warrior, and it says that Tomoe was Genichiro's mentor in swordsmanship, you know? Every indication is that Tomoe was an Okami. And, you know, presumably Takeru might have been too, because they came directly from the Divine Realm, so there's no indication they would be human. So you think that the two of them having a child, it would be an Okami. And clearly Kuro is not an Okami. So maybe Takeru had an affair with a human woman, or maybe there's some other process that we're not aware of. But there's a direct connection there between Kuro and Takeru.
Yeah, something sketchy is going on there.
Maybe sketchy. I don't know. Maybe. But yeah, so we get to Kuro, and Kuro is the latest Divine Heir, and he's got the dragon's blood. He gives it to Wolf. And from there come a lot of the problems and the corruption in the game that we see. Now, if we fast forward past all that to the boss fight with the Divine Dragon itself, it's very interesting. We don't fight the Divine Dragon right away. We fight these old dragons of the tree. And then the brown ones are really healthy, and they're a lot more vigorous. The gray ones are the ones we have to kill, and those are the ones that are coughing up poison, coughing and hacking poison. They'll actually inflict you with the or afflict you with the poison status debuff if you stay too close to them. And so clearly some sort of rot has set in to the Divine Dragon. It's missing its left arm, which I think has to do with when Takeru broke off a piece of the branch and took it with. I know that the item description to the aromatic branch says Al took it. Al plucked it. That may be a translation thing, or maybe that Al only got a piece of the branch that Takeru plucked off. The game is also clear that Takeru took a piece of the Everblossom with him. And so the Divine Dragon missing its left arm, maybe because Takeru or Al, broke off a piece of the. That's the prevailing theory, really, is that the piece was broken off, and so that represents the dragon's left arm.
Yeah, that would make sense, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, because the Everblossom is the Divine Dragon's avatar in the physical world, and there's a link between the two. So if there's injury to the Everblossom in the material plane, it could be injury to the Divine Dragon in the spiritual plane, where the Divine Realm is. And just as rot and corruption are setting in the real world, because the Divine Dragon's heritage was never meant to be there, the Divine Dragon itself is consumed by rot and corruption. So again, there's a parallel there. They're linked. What happens here also happens there, only it manifests differently. So just as rot and corruption are spreading here, rot and corruption are spreading in the Divine Realm, at least as far as the Divine Dragon itself is concerned. When we destroy the old dragons of the tree that are full of rot and corruption, that sort of purges it from the dragon, and you see a much healthier, more robust version of the dragon emerge from the rotted tree. Of course, now it's injured. It's got this big gash down its chest. It's missing its left arm. Clearly it's suffered some kind of injury, again, probably corresponding to things that have taken place to the Everblossom in the physical realm. And then we're bullies. We go ahead and we beat it into submission, cut underneath its eye, and take its tear.
I felt very yeah, we are bullies. We break into its basically habitat, beat up its guardians or whatever, and then just cut its eye open.
Well, it's weird because the guardians you're talking about, I think they actually represent the rot that has overtaken it, or at least have been affected by it. Because as soon as we kill them, it emerges from the rotted branches.
Oh yeah.
So I think it's not just my theory. It's like others have adopted it too. I know Smotown has, and maybe a couple of others too. It's like those sort of represent the rot that has overtaken. Clearly, they revere the dragon, but they're consumed by the rot. And when we kill them, the dragon is able to burst forth from the rotted branches as a much healthier, a more robust dragon.
Yeah, that makes sense. I kind of thought that they summoned it or something somehow as their last dying wish or whatever.
Well, you see, there are two. The brown ones are healthy, and the gray ones are rotted. So I think what we do by killing them is just kind of cut the cancer out, and then the healthy ones will turn and summon the dragon.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Actually, yeah.
Because then now all that's left are the healthy ones, and now they're free to summon the dragon in all of its glory. You know.
Oh, that makes sense. Wow.
And then in the boss fight, that weird looking green sword that the dragon wields.
Yeah.
I think someone asked a question in your Discord about that ages ago. We were going to do this, but we couldn't, and you were asking, does anybody have any questions? That actually has a real life analog. Way long time ago, like back in like the 1st century BC, a regional king in Korea gave as a gift to one of the Yamato rulers in Japan a 7-branched sword, which looks identical in terms of the shape to the sword that the Divine Dragon uses. Clearly, it was a ceremonial sword. It would have no use as combat. The sword exists today. It's not on public display. It's housed in a private place somewhere. It's a place called the Isonokami Shrine in the Nara Prefecture in Japan. You can't get in to see it. It's private. But it's almost 2,000 years old, so they're keeping it private. But a replica is on public display at the War Memorial in Seoul, Korea. So yeah, at least according to Wikipedia, which I consulted, of course. But yeah, it was a gift from this Korean ruler to this Japanese ruler, and it's got an inscription on it. And the inscription, some of the characters are indecipherable, but it's a 2-sided inscription, and Wikipedia translates it. It's like, at noon on the 16th day of the 11th month, 4th year of Tai, the sword was made of 100 times hardened steel. Using the sword repels 100 enemy soldiers. It is sent to the Duke Lord. Like, clearly that was hyperbole. That little dinky sword's not going to repel 100 soldiers, but that was,
Unless it's wielded by Guts.
Exactly. Guts, yeah. Well, Guts from Berserk, yeah. Of course, he's got his big sword, but anything in his hands would be a deadly weapon.
Yeah.
Then the second side says, never before has there been such a blade. The crown prince of the king of it's a Korean name, I don't know how to pronounce it, who lives under August Sounds, had this sword made for King of Wa in the hope that it might be passed on to later generations. And it was, like I said, it still exists today in Japan, in private. So yeah, that was a gift from a Korean ruler to a Japanese ruler way back in like 300. Every indication is it was manufactured in there's some evidence it was manufactured somewhere in the 300s. So almost 2,000 years ago. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, I was just saying that you actually reminded me that there were questions on Discord, and I should probably go through them. Oops.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So, Stormwalker says, how divine is the Divine Dragon?
It's a god. It's a spirit. It's a god. It's the holy dragon of the divine realm. So it is a deity. Yeah, so it's thoroughly divine.
Okay. And let me ask you, Nick, is it more or less divine than a really good tiramisu?
I'd have to say less.
Good. Okay.
I'd have to say less. Nothing like a good tiramisu.
Oh my god, yeah. A friend of mine made one once, and there was so much alcohol in it, and it was delicious.
Oh, that's the best kind.
Yeah. Marty is asking, will the Divine Dragon get rid of all the vines in my backyard?
I think it is the vines in your backyard.
So the Divine Dragon's going to have to move out of his backyard.
Yeah, you're going to have to bring proceedings to evict the dragon from your backyard.
Oh my god. So how would you go about doing that? Okay, Nick, let's say the Divine Dragon is on your property and he's not leaving. What do you do?
Well, you'd have to bring legally. You'd have to bring proceedings to evict him. You probably couldn't throw him out by force because that'd be against the law. Well, it depends. You can use some force to expel a trespasser, but there's a fine line because it can't cross the line into deadly force. So, in some states, you could try to use force to expel the dragon, but it's a god, so good luck with that. And failing that, the best way to go about it would be just to bring a proceeding to evict it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then, again, good luck trying to actually get rid of it because it's a god.
Okay, thank you, Nick.
It'll strike you down with lightning.
Storm Mocker is asking, what is the relationship between lightning and dragons? Is this something we see in various Souls-born hero games?
Oh, yeah, well, it's interesting. In Dark Souls, lightning kills the dragons.
Mm-hmm.
But in Sekiro, the dragon is the source of the lightning, of the divine lightning, which is passed on to the Okami people and eventually Genichiro. And then Ishin, So I think Miyazaki just wanted to kind of flip the script in Sekiro. It's like, okay, in Dark Souls, because of Seath the Scaleless, we know that lightning kills the dragons, especially when it's focused and sharp, like in a spear or something, because it pierces their scales. But we're going to do the opposite. We got a dragon in Sekiro. We got one dragon, and we're just going to have it be the source of lightning. So it's like Gwyn is sort of, no, not Gwyn. The Divine Dragon is sort of Gwyn and Seath together, if they had a baby. If Gwyn and Seath somehow had a baby, you would get the Divine Dragon.
Yeah.
Because, the Divine Dragon is pale, kind of like Seath is pale.
Mm-hmm. Right. But it feels like, that's right.
Yeah, Gwyn is the Lord of Sunlight, but sunlight is lightning in Dark Souls, pretty much. So it's like manifests as lightning, as Day points out. But yeah, so we got sort of the inverse of Dark Souls in Sekiro.
Okay, thank you. The Peasant Corn says, I would like to know whether or not Nick thinks the Divine Dragon is a higher being or simply another cycle in the line of the Divine Blood.
Well, like I said, I think, the Divine Dragon is, well, if you read the description of the dragons here, it says the Divine Dragon is eternal. And if you really kind of dissect the meaning of eternal, it's not so much that it had a beginning point in time and then continues to exist forever from that point in time. If you study like world religions and when, for example, in Christianity, God is eternal. It means God never had a beginning, nor will he ever had an end. He always was and he always will be. And I think that describes the Divine Dragon in this. It's eternal. It never really had a beginning, never really had an end. It just always was. So the Divine Dragon is the source of the lineage of the divine progression, the lineage of the heritage. So it was always there, and it was the beginning of everything. As far as the dragon's heritage is concerned. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes, I don't think it's a step in a line. I think it's the beginning of the line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because eternal means it always was.
Thank you. And Art Devinator Ark is asking, what's the Divine Dragon? But we just talked about the Divine Dragon for like 40 minutes. So
yeah.
I think we got it covered.
Yeah, what is it? Yeah. As far as Sekiro is concerned, I think we've explained what it is. Yeah.
And this is that was Blue Rose who asked about the Moonlight Sword question, as well as the sword, the 7-branch sword. So
yeah, and I think the connection to the Moonlight Sword in Dark Souls is it's green. It kind of glows green.
Do you think it's green? I think it's blue.
I guess it depends. Like it may depend on your monitor. Like if it's like a bluish green, then on some monitors it might appear blue. On some it might appear green.
Your mind. I think we should ask the chat. Yeah. Do you guys think it's more blue or more green?
Because if you read the Sekiro wiki, it also makes that connection. It's like the subtle color kind of reminds you of the Moonlight Sword. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's another connection to Seath too. I think that they drew at least some upon Seath when they were designing the Divine Dragon in terms of the appearance and stuff.
I feel like it's a color that we don't have a name for.
Just call it Color X.
Color X. Okay, so it's interesting. Magpie says green. Devmer says it's bleen. Cyan.
Cyan.
Coldzorus says, I'm colorblind. I think it's blue. And then Dave says ocean blue with green hues. Mm-hmm.
Well, the ocean itself kind of has green hues in it.
Yeah. Oh, man.
So yeah, it depends on maybe your monitor or your perception, because
Yeah.
people perceive color in different ways, like subtle differences.
It's like, what was that meme a few years ago? Is the dress black and blue or gold and white or whatever? Remember?
Some people would see it. Yeah, some people would see it as black and blue. Others see it as gold and white.
Yeah, or whatever those colors were. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, some people are going to see blue, some are going to see green, and there's evidence of that in the chat.
Cool. Okay, so Jacob is asking how many Sekiros could fit inside the Divine Dragon?
Well, by the size of it, I would say quite a few.
I don't know. I feel like it would be like maybe 5.
Well, I mean, assuming the Everblossom is not hollow, you'd have to hollow it out. So I'd say none, assuming that the Everblossom is not hollow.
Okay. How about we hollow out the dragon, and then we put a bunch of Sekiros in a blender, and then we build a hollow dragon with the blended Sekiros. How many could you fit?
Oh, at that point it'd be a lot because like sometimes you'll hear the story of like you put a bunch of rocks in the jar, you think the jar is full, but then you pour sand in the jar and you can pour a lot of sand in there because there's space between the rocks. Then you think the jar is full, but then you pour water in there and there's water in between the spaces between the sand and the rocks. So if you liquefy a bunch of Sekiros, you're gonna have a whole lot of them inside the dragon because it'll.
Excellent. I feel like we're having a very scientific podcast today.
We are.
Okay, so I hope that answers your question, Jacob. Princess LC is asking, is the idea of the Divine Dragon battle that it grants us an audience after curing it from Dragonrot? And are the old dragons of the tree supposed to be its retainers or servants or something?
I think that's the idea, but the gray ones have been corrupted, have sort of absorbed the corruption into themselves, and I think as soon as we kill them, the dragon breaks out of the. Hello. I thought my connection derped out again. Sorry about that.
That's okay. We still have this recording, so it's all good.
Excellent. So yeah, what was I talking about? I can't remember what I was talking about.
Think about the Sekiros in the blender.
Oh yeah, we got the Sekiros in a blend. Oh, that's comical, sort of. Oh, someone asked, like, when we fight the dragon, is that sort of like a weird audience with the dragon after we've set it free from the corruption? And then the old dragons of the tree. Clearly, they revered the dragon just by the way they sort of. But like I said, there are the two classes. There are the healthy ones and the decayed ones. I think the gray ones sort of represent the parts of the dragon that have been afflicted by corruption. Once we cut those out, the healthy ones are left. They sort of turn and worship the dragon, and that's when it comes forth from the tree. So I think, they're its retainers, and some of them have sort of absorbed the corruption into themselves. We cut those out, the dragon comes back. Because it's a god, it makes sense it would have retainers.
It's true.
And then when we fight it, I've sort of thought a lot about what's going on, because as soon as it sees us, it attacks us as if it knows we're there to take its tears and doesn't want to give them up. Or it could be like, in Dark Souls, you fight Ornstein and Smo, and only then does, big bosomed Guinevere or whoever it is deign to have an audience with you to give you the Lord vessel. It's like in Dark Souls, the gods don't want anything to do with you unless you're strong, if you're a human, unless you're very strong. And so once you defeat Ornstein and Smo, then she'll have an audience with you. I think it may be a similar thing here, in that the dragon wants to kind of test your mettle. Because I don't think we kill the dragon at the end of the boss fight.
I don't think so either. We just hurt it and hurt its feelings and hurt its eye.
Yeah, we need the mortal blade to kind of cut underneath its eye to get its tears. But I don't think we actually kill it. The lore description says it's eternal, but it's big, it's reptilian. That little cut underneath its eye is not going to kill it. So we cut its eye, we take its tear, and we need the mortal blade for that. But it may be that the dragon's just sort of testing us, to see if we're worthy to take its tears, see if we can knock it down and stun it. Or it could just be, hey, dude, it's my tear. I'm not going to give it to you. Come get it.
It's true. It's their property, so.
Yeah, it's like it's my dang tear. You're not going to take it from me. Or it could the reason it attacks us may have something to do with the fact that Takeru took the branch and it's just kind of pissed.
It's like, okay, where's my arm? Haha, very
Yeah, where's my arm, dang it? Hey, you don't have an arm either. Did you steal my arm? Is that what happened?
Maybe it wanted your prosthetic.
Or maybe it wants the prosthetic. Like, hey, I need an arm. It looks like you've got one. Come here. Give it to me.
There we go.
Jay, could you repeat that it woke up cranky? After all that time in corruption,
Yeah, it didn't have its coffee.
Yeah, it didn't have its. Didn't have its. That's it. That's it. It didn't have its coffee. It woke up, is cranky because it didn't have its coffee, and so it just wants to kill you as soon as it sees you.
Just like an average person on a Monday.
Me every morning. But
Okay, thank you. Okay, Princess Beef is asking, why is the Divine Dragon using the Morion blade?
oh well, I think. Oh shoot, there's one thing I forgot to mention about
Yes.
the 7-branch sword. Well, it looks like it has 6 branches, but the tip is considered to be the 7th branch.
Oh.
And basically, that design is a Korean tree motif. I think it's meant to just emphasize the connection between the Divine Dragon and the Everblossom.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you study Korean art, that's a tree motif. That exact design is a tree motif in Korean art.
That's cool.
So yeah, it's meant to symbolize, I think, the connection between the Divine Dragon and the Everblossom tree. I mean, it's referred to as as the holy dragon of the Everblossom tree, or the dragon of the tree. So there's the connection there. I just think the sword is meant to symbolize that.
Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, for those who don't know, it's the Dark Souls blade that we find with the yeah, it kind of looks like it. It kind of also looks like the rooftops that we see in Bloodborne type deal.
Kind of, yeah, with that little design. Of course, we all know that FromSoftware doesn't, reuse ideas or assets at all.
No, never.
Never.
Everything is unique. Everything is 100% original.
I'm surprised we didn't have a patches in Sekiro, man.
It's that little
that old lady, right?
Oh, old lady?
Oh no, it's
the little angry dude that you find. The little rat that helps you.
Oh yeah, Black Hat Badger. Black Hat Badger. He's the patches.
There you go.
Because he's pretty helpful actually in Sekiro. Like he sells you the umbrella, and in at least depending on what you do, he'll be the one to tell you how to get the snake heart and kill the snake.
Yeah, he's a helpful guy.
He is. Mizuki guy. I was thinking the same thing. The bandit merchant. He's more like patches to me, even though he doesn't really double cross you. But the bandit merchant. I think he's more like patches.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh yeah, go kill all these samurai for me. Oh man, you sure got me out of a jam. All right, well I'm not going to say anything here. Meet me back at the dilapidated temple. All right, cool.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Princess Shook is asking, what is the actual biology of the Divine Dragon? Is it actually part tree, part island or something?
Well, yeah, we touched on this before, but I think the Divine Dragon itself is a spirit. It's a god. It's divine. So in that sense, it wouldn't have a strict biology.
Mm-hmm.
But its earthly counterpart is the Everblossom tree. So in many ways, the dragon is the Everblossom, and the Everblossom is the dragon. It's the dragon is its earthly representation. And so whatever happens, so each reflects the other. Like if there's corruption in the earthly realm around the tree, the Divine Dragon is going to be mired in corruption, which we see, and then vice versa. Because the Everblossom is the way the Divine Dragon expresses itself in the physical plane. So it's biology. So I guess to answer the question more literally, its biology on Earth is that of a tree.
Actually, its biology is that it's hollow and it's filled with a bunch of blended Sekiros.
It's filled with a bunch of liquefied Sekiros. All right. Yeah, that's true. That's true. How could I overlook this?
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
That's it for the questions. Do you have anything else to say that's really important about the Divine Dragon?
Let me look over my notes, if you don't mind,
Yeah,
just for a moment. Let's see. Yeah. Then we talked about the holy chapter of the return, like the Western Pure Land Buddhism stuff. Oh, an interesting thing to note too, in Japanese, a lot of times dragons are represented as creatures of water, and of course, Fountainhead, there's water everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of another callback to Japanese mythology and the way they interpret dragons and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Takeru, yeah. We've talked about how the Divine Heir is immortal and the Oathbound of the Divine Heir is immortal and all of that stuff. But we talked to Kuro, he says that Takeru died at some point. That may not be strictly true, because remember we said that the Divine Heir is like a descendant of the Divine Dragon, and we've seen how the Divine Dragon, when we first encountered, it's wrapped up in these rotted tree branches, right?
Right.
Well, I saw a theory on YouTube. It wasn't Smoketown, it was someone else, and I thought it made a lot of sense. You know, as you're going through the Mibu village, there's like a prominent tree where you can find a healing gourd, and in later playthroughs, you'll find like a divine something or other, divine grass.
Okay.
There's a theory that is Takeru. That Takeru was on his way. That Takeru was on his way to the wedding cave through, because the wedding cave is where we get to the divine room. Takeru was on his way to the wedding cave, but he couldn't quite. But he was being overcome with corruption, the same corruption that's bound up in the Dragonrot, the same corruption that's bound up the divine dragon, and he couldn't quite make it, and he turned into the tree before he could get to the wedding cave. Because it happened to the dragon. It got bound up in all these rotted tree branches, right? Until we come and destroy the old dragons of the tree. So if it could happen to the divine dragon itself, why couldn't it happen to the Divine Heir? So it may not be that Takeru died. It may just be that he got wrapped up in all these corrupt, all these poisonous tree branches and became that tree. All of Mibu Village is mired in corruption. Everybody's corrupted.
Yeah.
Nothing is clean there. And so, as Takeru and Tomoe are going through Mibu Village on their way to the wedding cave, when he was so close, he just collapsed and got wrapped up in all these corrupted tree branches, and that's where he remains to this day.
Oh.
So very sad. So it's not that he died; it's just he became a rotted tree, like the Divine Dragon did. The Divine Realm.
Worse.
It's very sad. As far as what happened to Moe, I don't really know whether she shared the same fate or whether she just went off somewhere else.
Yeah,
I'm not exactly sure.
It would be nice if we had a DLC.
It would be nice if we had a DLC to retcon everything and explain some of this stuff. To add Maria.
I was just thinking that. That's what I was thinking. Like, they're gonna retcon everything, add Maria. I think it's Richie, like, transmitting thoughts into our mind.
I know, right? See, he's with us in spirit.
Yeah, even though his internet isn't.
Exactly. Which is sad.
Yeah. Dave is asking, is there a reason behind the dragons having humanoid faces?
Well, I think the Okami are kind of humanoid just because they're like offshoots from the Divine Dragon. Mm-hmm. So it kind of makes sense that they would be smaller and have sort of humanoid features. But the dragon itself, the way the dragon is depicted is pretty consistent with the way, it's sort of a toned down version of the way dragons are typically depicted in Japanese mythology. Mm-hmm. Like, so with a face that you can tell has some expression to it, that we might identify as human. So yeah, I just think that's basically an aesthetic artistic thing that's basically consistent with the way dragons are depicted in Japanese mythology. Like these long, slender, serpentine things with discernible faces, Hey, Luis.
You're just in time for the end, Luis.
Yeah.
Welcome. Thank you so much, Nick, for coming to the podcast yet again.
Of course.
Yeah, you're like our resident Sekiro expert now.
Oh yeah, I stream a full run through it every week on the return ending, so hopefully I'd know something about it.
And where could people find your streaming?
It's Twitch. I guess I'll type it in chat if that's okay.
Yeah, it's basically twitch.tv/Cynder with a Y _thief.
Yeah, exactly. For the benefit of those listening, twitch.tv/Cynder with a Y _thief.
Mm-hmm. And you also have a YouTube channel where you post clips, and it's the same thing. youtube.com/Cynder with a Y _thief.
Yeah, it's whatever.com/Cynder_thief. Yeah, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, same thing.
Okay, well, again, thank you so much. Hopefully Rich's internet is better one day, so maybe he'll join us in these awesome discussions.
That'd be lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah, and thanks for coming, everyone. Really appreciate it. Let us know how you like these live formats. If y'all like, maybe we'll do them more often. And yeah, thanks for coming, everyone.
Later, guys.
Bye.